This is for the woman who walked into a room she paid for and was asked to wait outside. This is for the man whose competence, earned over 4 decades, was summarily cancelled the very moment he hit 65. This is for the countless individuals who have faced the chilling effect of dismissal, not due to lack of ability, but due to the perceived dispensability of accumulated years. This is for the quiet courage that understands the definitive structural difference between shouting emotional accusations and citing procedural facts. We know the scene intimately. It is a moment of profound public vulnerability. The room goes silent, or perhaps continues its indifferent hum, but the noise in your head, the internal cry of injustice, is deafening. Someone, often younger, often leveraging institutional power they haven't yet earned the weight of, has decided that your historical contribution is meaningless. They have determined that you are no longer essential to the ecosystem. You are deemed a historical fixture, perhaps, but certainly not a founder of ongoing value. You are categorized as an administrative inconvenience, clearly not a strategic asset worth accommodating. You have witnessed this casual cruelty often. You have seen ageism and structural bias disguised meticulously as operational efficiency, veiled behind cold, sweeping corporate restructuring, or hidden within the most insidious bureaucratic phrase designed to erase identity. We need to update your status, and your position has been removed from the current organizational chart. This deliberate erasure is painful because it seeks to diminish your identity, your history, and your right to occupy space. But we are not here to dwell on the injustice. We are here to talk about the precise mechanism of the flip. We are talking about the critical moment. The inevitable outcome flips violently on its head, not because you succumb to the urge to raise your voice in frustration, not because you pleaded for recognition based on past deeds, but exclusively because you knew the governing rules better than the person tasked with enforcing them. And crucially, you brought the unimpeachable proof to the table. 3 specific, highly effective words that have the power to instantly freeze incompetence and abuse in almost any public or professional space. Show the policy. The procedural request is infinitely superior to the emotional shout. The documented rule, the codified standard, is the ultimate weapon that ends the argument before it can descend into a humiliating conflict of personalities. It is the quiet, assured gesture, a hand reaching methodically for the inner pocket, pulling out the policy citation, the contractual addendum, or the specific paragraph number. Within 24 hours of this kind of prepared response, you initiate genuine systemic accountability, whether you are standing in a glittering event hall, a corporate boardroom, or a bureaucratic waiting line. The cancelled badge and the quiet man of procedure meet Elias Petrov. He is 72 years old, having recently completed a successful, decades-long run as CTO of a massive global tech firm. He didn't simply retire. He was immediately retained on a highly specialized critical advisory contract, a contract that explicitly grants him mandatory, non-negotiable access to all closed-door leadership sessions concerning future financial planning and regulatory compliance. He isn't just an honored guest attending the annual industry summit. His continuous presence is a stipulated requirement for the compliance validation necessary to unlock the next quarter's multi-billion-dollar funding tranche. The stakes are immense, invisible, and existential for the company. He arrives at the exclusive, fiercely guarded founder's reception. The setting is designed to intimidate. The heavy velvet rope, the dangerously low ambient lighting, the discreet but noticeable security team, the expensive sound of clinking crystal glasses, and the designated gatekeeper. The gatekeeper in this scenario is Ava, a meticulously dressed operations manager, likely mid-30s. She is new to the specific operational role, armed with a digital clipboard, a headset, and the dangerous combination of inexperience coupled with excessive, unchecked authority. Elias approaches the polished podium, presenting his lanyard. It is silver, braided thick, and clearly denotes his protected status. Principal Emeritus, Advisory Board. Ava scans the encrypted code using her device. The machine emits a single, harsh, immediate denying sound, a digital rejection signal. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," Ava announces, projecting her voice just loudly enough that 3 senior, recognizable executives near the canapé section immediately swivel their heads in curiosity. This particular credential appears to be inactive. The Board Emeritus designation was formally phased out of the standard database last quarter, effective October 1st. Elias, who not only approved but actually helped write the governing phase-out and retention plan 6 months prior, feels the familiar, uncomfortable heat of pure, unwarranted indignation rise in his neck. "Excuse me, I assure you, I operate under a specific, highly current advisory contract. That contract references a cross-reference code. Check under the mandated compliance personnel section." Ava performs a theatrical, visibly dismissive sigh, a public display of patience being misused by an assumedly forgetful old man. "Sir, with respect, I understand you may have worked here previously for a very long time, but this specific reception is strictly reserved for currently active leadership. I must insist that you yield the space and step aside now." The predictable, yet fatal common mistake in this situation is arguing based solely on historical identity or personal reputation. The trap is to say, "I founded this entire division," or "I personally trained your current boss, who is standing right there." Or the most useless question, "Don't you know who I am and what I represent?" This emotional plea is precisely the fuel that ageism and institutional bias feed upon. It confirms the gatekeeper's predetermined bias. He's emotional, he's clearly outdated, he's resorting to irrelevant history because he cannot follow a simple procedure. Elias feels the internal, physical tremor of injustice. His stomach sinks. His immediate panicked urge is to snatch the badge back from her hand. He desperately wants to launch into a full accounting of the 40 years of structural investment he made in the company. But he stops himself absolutely cold. He recalls the core principle of the shift: less panic, more proof, exponentially more power. He recognizes the charged silence around him, not as an enemy, but as potentially valuable, objective evidence. Silence is forensic evidence. The best tool for securing justice does not need to shout to be heard. It needs only to cite the reference. Torbija the day the policy spoke and fiduciary duty activated. Elias had been preparing for this exact sort of calculated slight for 6 long months. Not preparing for this specific location or this exact employee, but preparing relentlessly for the structural inevitability of being summarily dismissed, disregarded, or detained by someone who fundamentally confuses the absence of age with the presence of organizational authority. He takes a deep, cleansing breath, slow and deliberate. He adjusts his posture instantly, standing profoundly tall and still, like a granite monument that cannot possibly be moved by mere wind or passing administrative decree. He executes the strategic shift, transforming instantly from an emotional reactant to a cold, procedural operator. "Ava," he says, his voice intentionally low, impeccably steady, and perfectly clear, never loud, never accusatory. "I fully understand and respect that you believe you are following instructions meticulously. I am asking you now to follow the full and mandatory policy regarding formalized access disputes as documented in the internal corporate governance statutes." Ava visibly frowns, momentarily derailed by the absolute lack of a defensive, emotional outburst. "The policy is extremely clear, sir. I deny inactive badges and request the user leaves the immediate area." "No." Elias corrects her gently, holding her eyeline absolutely steady. "That is the operational script for a non-essential vendor. The specific corporate policy regarding contractual advisory functions, which is codified under Section 4.2b of the Governance Handbook, requires immediate escalation upon dispute verification. I specifically request the Operations Director Mr. Henderson, or barring his immediate availability, the head of legal compliance. This is per Corporate Governance Policy 4.2b, subsection A, concerning mandated fiduciary access. He understands that he does not yet have to physically produce or show the entire document. He just has to name the definitive source with perfect accuracy. Naming the policy, citing the specific clause, is the primary weapon activation. Policy always, without exception, beats momentary ego. Ava attempts one final dismissive deflection. I simply cannot call legal compliance for a dispute over an outdated identification badge, sir. Elias simply states the concise, devastating sentence that instantly stops the entire table. Then I will initiate the compliance report myself, right now, using the mandatory reporting line, noting that advisory function 17C was obstructed at a critical, documented juncture regarding pre-funding validation. The mandated financial penalty for non-compliance with the access requirement outlined in 17C is precisely $500,000 per violation hour, starting at the time of my documented arrival. The air changes seismically and instantaneously. The stakes are no longer abstract. They are suddenly, terrifyingly real. The casual bias that cost the house is exposed as being not just about hurt feelings or personal offense. It is quantifiable, documented financial exposure directly threatening the company's stability. Elias reaches slowly, deliberately, into the breast pocket of his impeccably tailored blazer. This movement is not defensive. It is a meticulously executed, pre-planned step. He pulls out a small, highly specific laminated card, smaller than a credit card. This is not his ID badge. This is the confidential compliance addendum summary he had prepared. On the reverse side, printed in clear, small, technical font, are three key details. The specific contractual clause number, 4.2b. The name and direct mobile line of the supervising executive, the CFO, and the precise financial penalty structure for obstruction of advisory duty. He places the card calmly on the polished podium, pushing it just slightly toward Ava, giving her the opportunity to verify the technical data without touching it. He names the underlying bias calmly and professionally, transforming it into a structural problem. I understand completely that you believe this is simply an age issue, that I am perceived as irrelevant or merely nostalgic. But I assure you, based on the documentation right there, this is a Category 1 governance issue. I require immediate access to fulfill the contractual obligation that validates this entire funding package. The non-compliance liability is already running. He finalizes the request for accountability. I would like the person in charge who understands the precise, documented consequence of violating Governance Policy 4.2b to approach this podium immediately. Begin the 10-minute justice prep ritual, turning fear into fiduciary leverage. Justice is never instantaneous, nor is it passive. Justice requires intense preparation, absolute centering, and crystalline clarity under pressure. Elias had meticulously run this procedural script in his mind every single morning for 6 months. This is the repeatable, focused 10-minute ritual that transforms fear, anxiety, and indignation into systemic leverage. The location anchor. Identify a quiet, accessible corner, a private car, or even a stall in a secure restroom. Any place where you can mentally and physically anchor yourself away from immediate, distracting pressure. 1. Centered breathing and posture grounding, 3 minutes. The human body holds the memory of every past insult, every dismissal. You must physically shake it off. Stand up straight. Roll your shoulders back and down, settling your weight. Ground both your feet firmly into the floor. Practice slow, absolutely steady, deep diaphragmatic breathing. Inhale deeply for 4 counts, hold the air for 2, exhale fully for 6 counts. This physiological process sends a direct biological signal to your nervous system. I am fundamentally safe. I am in complete control of my reaction. Low physiological stress always results in the display of maximum perceived competence. 2. The tools and documentation check, 3 minutes. Open the dedicated labeled note on your phone immediately. Have the precise policy number, the ordinance rule, or the key contractual phrase ready for instant citation. Do not attempt to retrieve the entire lengthy document, just the number, the clause, and the penalty. Elias had saved a high-resolution screenshot of the critical contractual clause in a dedicated hidden folder labeled simply Proof. Camera readiness. Check the time location stamp function is active. The primary goal is simple. Be ready to capture the interaction clearly, non-threateningly, or instantly assign that duty to a designated ally. Documentation transforms accusation into factual record. 3. The low voice and steady eyes. 2 minutes. Practice and perfect your vocal tone. If you are escalating and angry, your natural pitch rises, signaling lack of control. If you are leveraging documented authority, your pitch must drop, signaling calm command. Speak 3 specific, neutral procedural phrases aloud, practicing the low, measured tone. 1. I require the person in charge immediately. 2. Please confirm the exact rule number you are citing to deny my access. And 3. I require a certified copy of the written policy that governs this situation. Your eyes must remain steady and unwavering, not aggressively confrontational, but objectively observant and firm. Kelsor, the Ally Activation Protocol. 2 minutes. Never fight alone if you can avoid it. Leverage solidarity and objective observation. Who is your designated witness? Who is your documented legal ally? For Elias, it was his experienced executive assistant, Maria, who was waiting discreetly nearby. He had sent her a silent, pre-agreed text beforehand. Code 4.2b in effect. Record and observe the interaction until confirmation. Allies fundamentally change the outcome. They act as the objective, external mirror that records the truth when your own memory may be clouded by the rush of adrenaline and indignation. The essential benefit of this systematic preparation is instant clarity under duress and maximum leverage. When Elias placed that laminated card down on the podium, he was not acting out of a sudden, desperate panic. He was flawlessly executing a documented, rehearsed, and legally sound plan designed to assert authority through procedure. Nurture the reversal and the systemic reckoning. The small laminated card sat there, catching the stark reflection of the light under the expensive chandeliers. It was indisputable, physical evidence. The specific policy citation, 4.2ab, was not, as Ava assumed, about simple event access. It was entirely about mandatory fiduciary duty. It formally mandated that the principal advisory function, Elias, must be physically present to validate the minutes, audit the attendees, and confirm the compliance of any pre-funding executive summit. Denying him entry at this crucial juncture meant, by definition, that the summit was technically non-compliant with corporate covenants. The legal compliance officer would therefore be mandated to nullify the entire meeting, immediately delaying the $500 million Series D funding announcement planned for the very next morning. The executives who had initially turned away from the brief commotion were now rapidly walking toward the podium, their faces suddenly tight with profound, stomach-dropping realization. They knew what 4.2b meant. One of them, the actual operations director, Mr. Henderson, recognized the number instantly, the moment his eyes landed on the small font. Ava, what precisely is happening here? Henderson demanded, shoving past her urgently to pick up the laminated card. His professionalism evaporated into frantic urgency. Henderson quickly read the clause summary, then looked directly at Elias, whose composed expression was perfectly unchanged. Calm courage, supported by documentation, is overwhelmingly the most powerful professional weapon available. Mr. Petrov, I am profoundly and deeply sorry. This is a severe, structural error in security protocol. Henderson immediately addressed Ava, his voice now sharp, final, and laced with professional dread. This is not an inactive badge. This designation is a crucial compliance role. Your procedural error compromises the entire pre-funding validation window and triggers the non-compliance penalty. Henderson didn't need Elias to repeat the problem, the cost, or the stakes. The irrefutable proof that permanently ends the excuse was sitting right there on the table, self-evident. Ava stammered hopelessly, attempting to revert to the initial Aegis script. "But sir, he's retired. I truly thought the system—" Henderson cut her off with devastating finality. "Your untested assumption has instantaneously cost this company quantifiable thousands in potential liability and institutional reputation damage. You failed absolutely to follow the mandatory escalation protocol 4.22b, which Mr. Petrov correctly and professionally cited. Your access to operations databases has been revoked immediately, pending internal investigation. Security will escort you off the premises." The invisible barrier of institutional resistance broke entirely. Elias was ushered in immediately, not with a reluctant, grudging wave, but with palpable deference, accompanied by effusive apologies from multiple executives. He did not gloat. He did not even spare a glance for Ava's presence as she was led away, visibly pale and professionally defeated. He simply walked through the threshold, his professional dignity not merely intact, but magnified and systemically reinforced. The outcome was swift, structural, and total. Ava faced immediate internal review and formal dismissal for gross procedural negligence. The operations director issued a formal, system-wide written apology to the advisory board, and most critically, the systemic fix was immediate and comprehensive. Within 24 hours, Policy 4.2b was reposted company-wide, specifically listing Principal Emeritus status as protected and requiring the operations team to undergo mandatory, formalized training on age-related bias detection and explicit policy adherence documentation. Elias did not secure justice by shouting emotionally about ageism or personal grievance. He secured profound systemic justice by leveraging his deep procedural competence to expose and quantify institutional failure using documentation. Big assets, even bigger dignity, secured by policy. That's right. Your authority is permanently documented. Ageism, administrative carelessness, and bureaucratic incompetence all share the same structural desire. They seek to treat your most valuable assets, your experience, your earned retirement, your accumulated savings, your professional history, your health, as things that can be casually dismissed by momentary ego or sloppy procedure. We must remember and assert constantly that true, non-negotiable authority is documented, verifiable, and legally binding. Perhaps your challenge is not a corporate contract, but a critical, signed deed on the table during a fraught family meeting. Perhaps it's a specific, highly detailed house rule signed by the Tenants' Rights Association or property manager. Perhaps it's the formal medical privacy form, HIPAA or equivalent, you hold in your hand that strictly limits who is legally permitted to speak for you or access your records. The sentence that decisively stops the table, redirects the conflict, and asserts authority is never the emotional demand. How dare you treat me this way? It is always the cold, documented inquiry. Show me the precise rule you're following to deny me access, and then show me the specific rule under which I am protected and entitled. Your sustainable power is rooted not in the volume of your indignation. It is meticulously catalogued in the rigor of your knowledge. Dwyer, safety procedure and formal escalation pathways. Let's maintain absolute clarity. The defense of dignity requires physical and emotional safety first. You must always respect your physical limits and the potential volatility of the aggressor. If any situation escalates rapidly toward physical confrontation, verbal threat, or extreme risk, you must prioritize safety above all else and physically remove yourself immediately from the conflict zone. Documentation, the recorded audio or video, then transforms from a tool of leverage into critical, necessary evidence for law enforcement, legal aid, or adult protective services. laws and enforcement mechanisms vary drastically depending on the specific location, state, country, city, jurisdiction. Always rigorously adapt these strategies to the established formal channels. Police reports, detailed certified letters to legal aid, specialized social services, specific condo homeowner associations, HQA, EGCOA, rules, or company, HR to ethics departments. If the person in charge refuses absolutely to comply with your request for documentation or escalation, the non-negotiable next step is formal, documented escalation, a recorded phone call to their immediate superior, a notarized email, or a certified letter citing the exact violation number and demanding a formal written response within a stipulated time frame, e.g. 72 hours. Jartirir. One action today, building the toolkit. The next inevitable confrontation is coming. The only variable is your level of preparation for it. I challenge you to choose one focused action today to immediately begin building and hardening your personal justice toolkit. 1. Save the policy reference. Identify one key, critical piece of documentation that governs a vulnerable area of your life right now. HOA parking rule, specific clause in a will or trust, financial POA boundary limits, medical rights statement, tenant lease clause. Save only the number or the key phrase in a dedicated, easily accessible phone note, ready to copy-paste or cite instantly. 2. Set the recording shortcut. Create a specialized, tested shortcut on your phone's camera or voice recorder that allows you to start recording video and audio with one reflexive gesture, often a double press of the power button or a specialized widget. Practice this until the action is fully instinctive and reflexive, achievable under stress. 3. Practice the phrase. Practice one calm, neutral, procedural phrase aloud in front of the mirror, ensuring you use a low, steady, commanding voice. I require the person in charge now, and I require a certified copy of the policy you are citing. Spend 10 concentrated minutes on your justice prep ritual tonight. Center your breathing, verify your critical evidence, and remind yourself, clearly and without doubt, that your earned authority is permanently documented and cannot be revoked by assumption. Comment below with the action you chose today and describe the next scenario you want us to procedurally dismantle, because the fight for structural dignity is continuous, and we fight it best when we are calm, technically competent, and meticulously prepared.